Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this HSJ webinar exploring how the apprenticeship levy can help support and develop your managers. My name is Annabelle Collins, and I'm a senior correspondent at HSJ covering workforce, and I'm your chair for today's event, which is being run in association with Corndel. I'm really pleased to be joined by James Kelly, co-founder of Corndel, Caroline Waterfield, Director of Development and Employment at NHS Employers, Claire Aspden, Apprenticeship Lead at the University Hospital Southampton Foundation Trust, and Becky Hogan, Talent and Learning Director at Bupa Global and UK. So the NHS has struggled to spend the apprenticeship levy, with up to 70% of the money it pays through this, around £200 million a year, going unused, despite the best efforts of NHS organisations to access it. Common criticisms of the levy are its lack of flexibility, and workforce leaders have long been calling for reform. Discussions of workforce supply have never been more timely, and as the COVID crisis has undoubtedly brought human resources in the NHS to a head, several months of working at 100% has left some staff feeling demoralised and exhausted. There are real concerns around staff sickness and retention, and many managers also share those feelings and have their own need for support as they support those working around them. So this HSJ webinar will therefore look at how the levy money can be used to support managers and rekindle their enthusiasm and passion to work in the NHS. And for those of you watching live, there's a chance to submit your own questions to the panel. Follow the prompts on your screen, and I'll bring in thoughts from viewers as the debate progresses. Some opening questions from me, though. I'd like to turn to Caroline first, and just get started really talking about this issue, and why is the issue of using the apprenticeship levy important, especially now more than ever?
Thanks, Annabelle. I'm really pleased to be able to join today. I think you mentioned in your opening piece that there's been a lot of ask and calling for changes in the way that the levy works to enable organisations to be able to access the funds to support them in the things that they need to do. And there have been some movements and flexibility awarded over the last couple of years, and we've seen some of that really help organisations up the numbers of apprentices that we have in the system. And if I look back to some of the numbers that we had in the year 2017, we were sitting at around, just over 8,000 apprenticeship starts within the sector. By the time we got into 2018-19, we were up to just shy of 20,000 starts, and that's because of the the efforts that have been placed by colleagues like Claire and others around the country to really think differently about how they use some of this, and how they use some of the levy, and how they use the opportunity that it gives to support both their existing staff and people coming into the organisation for the first time. I think there's a real immediate challenge with COVID, which has presented some real pressures in organisations around supporting apprentices. But if we think back to where we were before we went into the pandemic, we'd seen the staff survey tell us that there was an increase in staff morale reported. There was an increase and positive progress around the relationship that people had with their managers, and on appraisal, and all of that links to how we support and train and develop people going forward, and the apprenticeship piece is part of that. I see that there's three or maybe four main areas in which we could focus on, the positive parts of the apprenticeship piece going forward, dealing with and living with COVID, because we've paused some things in the immediate time, but we need to think about how we unpause some of that so that we don't create more problems going forward. I see apprenticeships being able to support managers with some of the really tricky situations that they find themselves in now that were different to before. So additional skills and experience, and how can some of the leadership qualifications and apprenticeships that exist help to equip managers to deal with some of that. Addressing inequality, and whether or not there's ways in which we can use both the apprenticeship courses and the money that exists to really promote and address some of the discrimination and equality agenda that has really come to the fore. Making sure that we absolutely keep a focus on that workforce supply piece, so that we don't go backwards when we're trying to go forwards in terms of that continuing pipeline, and and supporting people's development. And the final thing is really our role as NHS organisations in our communities. As the economic environment in which we operate in has changed quite significantly, how can we as a major employer look at using both apprenticeships and the levy to support people accessing employment in both health and social care in a way that they might not have thought about in January when they had a different job? And are there things that we can do to help support and upskill people there? So there would be my four things in where I think the levy could help us. Rather than think about why we haven't spent the money that we've got.
No, brilliant. I think that's a great start. Lots of things to get stuck into there. And I think actually I'd just like to bring in James at this point and just kind of ask for your perspective on why the levy is important before we dive into some of those more sort of specific issues around it.
Yeah, so I kind of you're delighted to be on the call this morning, and sort of background at Corndel, we work with about 2,000 managers across all sorts of sectors. I think in terms of the NHS and just, 3 points for me, I guess. Kind of first one is probably management skills across the whole of the economy have never been more important. And if that's true across the whole economy, it is certainly true in terms of the NHS and the challenges that you face and the tremendous job you're doing in the face of, huge challenges. So the importance of those skills, I think, has never been greater. I think probably the second thing is that a good management and leadership program, and the way we conceive that at Corndel, is really about giving managers lots of personal, practical support in terms of their day job. You don't want ethereal concepts. You actually want things that can help you manage the difficult conversations, the day-to-day challenges, and then sometimes the emotional fatigue. And core to what we embed in our programs, which I think is really important to developing managers, which very much executives get, is we have a real focus on one-to-one support. So for us, that one-to-one fortnightly support from a management coach that's working with you on a one-to-one basis in a really flexible way is key, because particularly when things are challenging, having someone you can talk to about how you manage your team, how you can motivate people, how you can engage people just seems super important in resilience, well-being, all of those core things. And you can do that with the levy. And if giving people that support's the third one, I think really there's a key piece around actually many organisations have just underestimated how they can use the levy to support and develop their workforce. It can be hugely flexible. We run and support graduates. We do women returners programs. We do all sorts of things with the levy to support management teams and grow management teams. And when you can make a sort of £5,000-7,000 investment in a member of staff with a budget that if you didn't use is going to go back and not be used by your trust, it just seems that there's a huge potential there. So giving people support at a time of real need is absolutely, I think, a key pinpoint way of using the levy right now. Hope that helps as a bit of flavour from us about why you can really use it.
No, absolutely, and I think that point about supporting people at this point in time is an important one. And I think I'd be quite keen to hear from Claire now, just around the state of morale among managers at the moment, and of course other staff as we move from what's been a very difficult spring and summer into winter, which is always traditionally more pressurised in the NHS.
Thanks, Annabelle. Yeah, indeed. Winter pressures, spring pressures, summer pressures. It's all a bit of it all sort of merges now into one. And it is true around the fact is there is a lot of what would be classed as COVID exhaustion, and trying to help managers to sort of see through that is a challenge. And certainly, through the apprenticeship levy, we have supported some of our, sort of junior managers through from, entry level through to senior leader apprenticeships, in order to sort of look at the talent pool that we have organisationally, in order, so that they can then support, the junior staff coming through. And on the sideline from the apprenticeship, there's been an awful lot of support internally within the organisation around staff support and stuff and looking after staff, which again has been a key thing organisationally for us to make sure that actually we are supporting all staff through the COVID situation, and it's not going to go away anytime soon, and that's going to be a challenge. Certainly, when we're going back to apprenticeships and actually saying to people, how about this, this, and this, and actually sometimes it's a case of it's not the right time to talk to managers about it. However, it's my job in the whole scheme of things is to actually promote apprenticeships across the organisation, and to see the benefit organisationally. And we certainly have seen that in some of the areas, some of the local managers who've seen and grasped apprenticeships certainly and embraced them and recognise the value. And from entry level through to, like I say, to the senior, the level 7 apprenticeships is absolutely key organisationally. Hope that helps.
It does. Thank you so much. And I think now, obviously, it'd be great to hear from Becky. Slightly coming from a slightly different perspective at Bupa. I wonder what are your thoughts on how can additional training and coaching opportunities play in boosting morale at the moment?
So firstly, thank you for inviting me to the panel. And before, can you hear me? Can you hear me okay? Yes, okay. So thank you for inviting me to the panel. Fine, and I do just want to say that what's very important to me is to get across that whatever I say is with a big dose of humility and respect to the NHS, because we are tiny in comparison. We're 30,000 employees and we're a mixed provision business plus also an insurance business. So I recognise the difference. But in answering the question, I would say that what's really interesting about morale is that it's something that's externally referenced to a person. So it's something that I perceive out there, and it's something that, when we have fight or flight and we're triggered all the time, we're feeling like there's a sense of loss of control. But the one thing you can control is yourself. And by offering educational opportunities, apprenticeships being one of them, means that you can empower the person to take control of themselves. Because I think that's really sort of fundamental, that you create this learning environment in which I might not be able to change these big things that are happening to me, but I can go through my education and I can change how I feel about whatever that is that's triggering me, by being given skill sets, the confidence, the resilience, all of these extra things that put me back in control. So if morale's an outcome, brilliant, but that's not how we're targeting at Bupa. We're actually targeting the process and the experience people are going through.
Thank you so much for those thoughts, Becky. I wonder whether, I don't know who'd want to come in on this one, but I'm just wondering how you ensure that when times get really tough, that time and headspace, I suppose, for learning and development is protected. How do you ensure that it's not the first thing that disappears and isn't the focus anymore? Because obviously it's a real important anchor for retention and kind of keeping your workforce kind of happy and motivated. Anyone have any thoughts on that question?
Do you want me to speak to that?
Yeah, please do.
I mean, in terms of what we've done at Bupa in this year, we haven't actually stopped any apprenticeships. Individuals could pause if they wanted to, which is true of any time. But we have paused lots of ad hoc interventions, but our programmes, we have had people continue, and we haven't been asked from the business to stop. And I think that's symptomatic of it being designed and planned at the outset, is delivering what is needed to run your organisation at the time. So it's not just about the curriculum, so we're actually in partnership with Corndel, so James and I work together. And so when we set about putting those particular apprenticeships in place, we thought ahead and actually about the relevancy of what they're learning. The CMI curriculum's important, but so is everything else that you add around your cohorts and the learning. And I think that really pays dividends when things get tough and you've got that time challenge you were talking about, Annabelle.
And just coming in on that, I mean, from our point of view, I mean, the key thing about learning when managers are under pressure and they've got lots going on is, one, things have got to be super flexible. So you've got to have programs that can really flex around individuals' needs and what's going on. And also the other thing is that the learner and the manager on that program has got to think, God, I want to join that coaching session. I want that one-to-one session because that's really going to help me. It's not something I've got to do. It's got to be something that's actually going to give me, particularly now, emotional support, resilience, all of those things. So the individual really wants that to take place because it's going to help them in their day job rather than it being abstract. And that seems pretty core to, I think, delivering a great program right now.
Thanks, James. Those are really interesting thoughts. Caroline, yes, please jump in.
And I think others who are providing this themselves within organisations will have their own reflection on it. But apprenticeships are work well when like James says, the individual is driven to want to take the time out to go and do this. But they also need the engagement and support of the manager and the team that they're working in. And those rules of engagement around how that works are really, really important. And I think where this can fall down is if actually both parties aren't committed to doing it. And when you describe, Annabelle, things are busy, how you make sure that conversation is open and transparent and works through some of the issues that might be placed on individuals in terms of trying to manage both the workload that's in place and the educational, the learner's education is really, really important. And not to underestimate that has to happen, and there needs to be time into that, as well as then the supervisor's time to support the person when they're doing it. And it's not that any of this is impossible, but to I suppose recognise that things will change over the course of somebody's apprenticeship, perhaps, and people who are in the apprenticeship now, and we've gone into COVID, there's needed to be almost recontracting of that conversation about how to manage some of the work and the educational aspect that needs to happen to support the person completing, so that they don't stop, but they might pause some things and then restart them. And I think that I'm sure that there are many experiences that people have had where it's become difficult for them in their environment to find the time to do it and do their job, and it's that open conversation with the manager that feels the critical point in that. But Claire and Becky are probably closer to that piece than where I am within a membership organisation.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, did you want to jump in there, Claire?
Yes, please. Yes, please. I think we were really keen to continue all our apprenticeships through COVID. I think it was a challenging decision to make. We only paused our internal delivered senior healthcare support worker apprenticeship. That was the only one we stopped. Paused for all learners, because actually that was the more challenging one for us to keep going. But all other learners in our sort of multiple different apprenticeships across the organisation continued. There were very, very few pauses. And it wasn't just about us as an organisation, it was about actually the training providers. If you suddenly you pause everybody, training providers are going to, struggle. And actually we didn't want that to happen either. So, particularly if I talk about our nursing degree apprentices, they're all in a different place now. We had to jiggle around with placement hours and theory hours and, and stuff. And everybody's on a slightly different program now. But we wanted that to continue because we feel that actually we need to know that we've got nurses who are registered in 3 years' time, not nurses who will be registered in 5 years' time, because we want them sooner into the workforce. So, it was a challenge, absolutely. But, fair play to the apprentices and their managers who continue to support. And it was a question we asked out. It wasn't a decision made by myself or the senior team here. It was a decision made by managers to say, actually, are you happy for them to continue? And absolutely, it went across the organisation that yes, please continue. So we did. So I'm really pleased, that we did do that. And it's now just picking up the pieces and supporting those apprentices that might feel like they've got behind or so yeah. So thank you.
No, brilliant. I think that's really, really kind of cheering to hear that you kind of managed to make it work kind of despite difficult times. And that links quite nicely to a question we've had in actually from Gillian McCarthy from the University of Manchester. And she's asking, does the levy involve additional work for managers in supporting leadership development for their staff? Which I think is quite I think quite something quite interesting to hear your thoughts on. I don't know who wants to jump in on that one at all.
Maybe if I come in there. So I kind of starting point really is that the way we look at apprenticeships, we actually kind of position them as just management programs. The management programs are funded through the apprenticeship levy. And I think on the work component, the whole idea of a good management program is it actually helps people manage better, which means that it should save them time, make them more productive, make them enabled and able to do things in a more streamlined way. So the things that we do, particularly now with our clients, is almost the first part of our program. We really look at time management skills, how you can manage your day, how you can manage your workload, how you can manage teams. So you actually give people productivity support at the start. And by doing that and really connecting with the individual, you give them the skills to be able to get through a program that definitely has some work involved in it, but it's done in such a way that it actually makes them and gives them the tools to do things in a better way that doesn't make it hugely onerous. And just briefly on the point around line manager support, that is key to a good program. I know colleagues on the call mentioned that, and we really bake in three-way conversations between someone on the program and their line manager, both at the start and the duration of the course, because you've got to have that support to make this work and carry you on the journey on your what for us is often a 12-month experience for the people on program. So yeah, hopefully that helps a little.
Absolutely. Before we move on to another question, does anyone want to share thoughts on that one?
I suppose there's we've got some examples from different organisations where the critical point for it feeling like it's time and investment very well spent for both the individual and the manager is where some of the off-the-job training can be utilised to support some of the knotty problems that either a team or a department might have. So whether that's around delivering on some change, some improvement, making progress on how they report on certain things, whether it's
Oh, hello. I think Caroline might have frozen, unless she's just sitting very still. No problem. I think, and sorry to cut you off. Oh, no, you're fine now. You're back with us. I think that's fine.
Sorry. Okay, apologies. My screen just went black, and I thought I'd lost my connection with you. But I was saying that where managers have felt that there can be real progress made with something that supports them. Actually, there's been a real enthusiasm to take that on and go above and beyond, and that's been really positive in terms of developing a bit of an advocacy then within the team or then with neighbouring teams, and some of that's really spread across organisations. But yeah, finding the things which will make a difference to people's working lives has been really positive.
Brilliant, thanks, Caroline. I think we're getting some really interesting questions through, and there's one I'd like to put to you all from Vicky Malia at Nottingham University Hospitals Trust, and she says, what opportunity is there to find more of a balance for managers who may not want to commit to a lengthy apprenticeship to get a formal qualification such as the level 5 chartered management degree or the level 7 MBA, but who do want to broaden their profile? Vicky says, I find the time commitment is what years is what is putting a lot of our managers off at the moment, but they would like to pick up funded standalone modules. I think that's a really interesting question. I'm sure a lot of people out there might have the same concerns maybe around time commitment. Who would like to go first with that one?
Maybe a point from me there, Annabelle, is just one thing on time commitment. One of the limitations of the levy is that programs have to be 12 months. From a Corndel perspective, we absolutely deliver the level 5 program in 12 months. I think what also we do, which is I think sometimes we have learners who are on a levy program and they're doing a management program, they're doing the coaching and having the support. But we can often run workshops and sessions, and we're doing this with many clients around resilience at the moment, where you combine those sessions and you can have group conversations where you've got people who are on a levy program, but they might be joined by managers who just want to join on a particular aspect of that program as well. And there's opportunities to blend things there, particularly where you've got a momentum behind a program in an organization. And I think that's really working with your provider or your in-house team to just think about what are the flexibilities are, because every organization's different there, but I'm sure others have got experiences in their own organizations.
Thanks. Yes, please.
Yeah. Hi. So I would say that that's probably not something we would choose to do at Bupa, because for us it's the whole package and the experience coming together. So probably standalone modules wouldn't work for us. We use these apprenticeships, level 3, level 5, as really core curriculum for managers and leaders. But we've just spent a lot of time trying to educate what it means to learn on the job, off the job, so that, time is very valuable, and important, so that they make the most effective use of their time. And so just, when we started sort of 3 years ago, there was a very different view of what did it mean to be an apprentice. And I think it still had that old-fashioned view of going to college and, off you go one day a week. And we've worked very hard to just reframe everything, because the qualification at the end is great, but actually that's just a nice benefit at the end. What is so much more important is actually the learning experience throughout the period. So we're always oversubscribed for our apprenticeships every time we open up a cohort for enrolment. So I think we would probably stick with this. We do have some ad hoc learning around it, but this is really core for us.
Thanks, Claire. I think I will move on to another question then. We have one from Robin Swain at Leeds Teaching Hospitals NHS Trust. And the question is, completely agree that management skills can be fully enhanced through the apprenticeship model, but to what extent should organisations be investing in establishing and promoting programmes such as the Level 7 Senior Leader Programme? So the Level 7 Senior Leader Programme, when the IFA, I'm not sure who that is, have made clear that the L7 models are not the way forward for apprenticeships. So sort of quite a specific question around the Level 7 Senior Leader Programme. I don't know whether anyone has any thoughts on that. Yep, please go, Becky.
Claire, sorry. Yes, I agree that the Institute for Apprenticeships have, made it quite clear about the Level 7 and apprenticeships for senior leaders. And for us, we have a leadership and talent group who look at actually organizational leadership. And, we made it really clear that, we do use the senior leader apprenticeship, but what we said that is it wasn't for everybody. Everybody can't do the MBA, because actually you don't need that level within the organization or in that sort of in those numbers. So we agreed to support 10 apprentices a year onto this program, and we've continued to do that. And originally it was incredibly popular. I think I had about 90 expressions of interest when I first put it out, and that was across all professions. But organizationally, we said actually 10 would be sufficient. And these leaders are, the award leaders. They are education teams. We've had, divisional director sort of level have done it. So, or in the process of doing it. So we do use a senior leader, absolutely. And, as long as we can use it, we'll continue to use that route for staff.
Thank you. Yeah, Caroline.
Hi, Annabelle. It's the 5th most utilised apprenticeship that we deploy in the NHS, and the most utilised degree programme. So I think, like Claire says, there's clearly support from across organisations. We have other examples where trusts have really used this to bridge some of the gap they've had with BME senior leaders, and specifically approached and targeted individuals from a BME background to try and encourage that. And I've found that, you know, a third of a programme that they were running of around 25 people really supported people who might not have found themselves on such a programme. So I think it's, you know, people have shown that it's had real value, and across our organisations, because it's the 5th most utilised apprenticeship, I think we would be supportive of that in conversations with us. But it isn't, like Claire says, it's not for everybody. And I think the question that was posed is there may be managers who don't want to commit to all of that, but want to commit to some sort of leadership development. And I think from you know, organisations will want to support that, but we'll need to just find other ways of doing it rather than levying money from the apprenticeship pot.
And just coming in that maybe from a Corndel perspective, I think kind of there's loads of research out there that actually shows middle management can have some of the biggest impact on organisations. And I think there's that balance between the senior sort of level 7 programs and the kind of, sometimes, you know, it is more academic in terms of approach those programs. We have actually quite a lot of senior managers do level 5 programs, and the reason we push that in terms of choices for clients is often the coaching support, the kind of the things we talked about at the start around resilience, emotional support, one-to-one coaching. They can be you know, less academic and more hands-on in many respects, and that's a really important point for us in terms of sort of deployment. So definitely a mixed range. I also think clearly an MBA course can actually be years rather than 12 months. And again, it's kind of choices for organisations and just knowing what's out there actually, and getting the right thing for the right team.
Brilliant, thank you, James. I think I've got a question actually. Maybe Claire, maybe you might be best placed to answer this one, but anyone else, obviously, feel free to jump in. But just wondering how you ensure that staff who might not usually think of going for an apprenticeship or using the apprenticeship levy, I think Caroline, you mentioned BME staff, and ensuring that it's kind of open to all. I'd be quite interested to hear how you make sure that the people learning about the levy and feeling that it's something for them, how you ensure that is, I suppose, how you implement that in your trust.
So do you mean for BME staff or just generally across?
Yeah, so I suppose staff who might not usually be whose staff you might worry about not putting themselves forward perhaps to use this money. We know that there are more needs to be done to increase the number of BME managers in the NHS. And I'm just wondering how do you really encourage people who might not usually put themselves forward? I suppose that's what I'm getting at.
We're I agree that there is a dearth of BAME staff on sort of some of the senior leader or some of the senior sort of apprenticeships, and we are doing some targeted work around this, and it sits within our organisation to actually look at talent across that group of people. And we are doing some positive advertising, trying to get people who, like say, who may not think that they're should be doing an apprenticeship or wouldn't be able to do one, or don't feel that they're at that level. And if they're not at the sort of the higher end, actually, how do we then get them onto the apprenticeships from a team leader perspective, at the entry level, to actually then move them forward through the apprenticeships and the opportunities within there. And it is a challenge. I can't deny it, and I think most NHS organisations will probably be in a similar position. But it is absolute work in progress, and it sits as one of our main trust organisation targets to actually increase that number.
Thanks, Claire. Yes, Becky.
Yeah, so I would just add, so we made a fundamental decision in 2018 in our design that every apprenticeship would be open enrolment and that we wouldn't allow nominations, so that we would level the playing field, and then it was based on an application and merit, so people earned their place, and that has had a really positive impact, and we get great feedback, because it's not just about getting the opportunity to take the apprenticeship. It's also when you don't get the opportunity and what you can access, what feedback you can get. So it feels like it's an empowerment point for the individual to be able to put themselves forward, to talk to their manager, and then that really has helped us with our inclusive approach. So I know organisations do it in different ways, but for us it is always open enrolment.
Thanks, Becky. Any other points from anyone before I move on to another question?
Just coming in on Becky's point, I think the way Bupa have done this is, sorry, I don't know if you hear me there. The kind of the point was that actually open enrolment can work incredibly well, because I think one of the issues we've seen it where programs haven't really taken off in organisations is where the organisation can just put too much bureaucracy and so many rules around being able to apply for a management program that it actually puts people off. And the best way of kind of making sure you kind of get that traction is one, actually having a great program that people hear about, and that becomes a kind of almost recruiting sergeant for it. But yeah, I think the kind of promotion, and also kind of really basic things like branding. We don't talk about the apprenticeship management program. We talk about a great management development program that is funded by the levy. And I think some of that positioning is something that people in trusts can really think about. And there's some great ways of doing it that can really attract people from a whole range of different backgrounds, particularly people who might not have a formal, educational background, might have left school earlier, whatever else. It's kind of making them feel that these programs can work for them, because then they become both inclusive, but actually really impactful as well.
Thanks, James. I think I will now go back to our audience for a question. This question is specifically for James and Claire, and it's asking, which standards are you offering, and are they offered to specific bands?
I can go first if you like.
I hope that.
We offer all programs. There is, we have, from level 2 customer service right through to 7 in senior leaders, and the advanced clinical practice apprenticeship. And I think that, it's open to all staff. There's no, anybody can apply for the apprenticeships. But clearly it's around the role that they're doing. So, it is absolutely key to what role are they in, and or where do they see themselves going in the future. And it actually, there is a stuff around enabling people to get where they want to be. And some people are doing apprenticeships that may not fit necessarily within the role that they're doing, but actually will help them then progress into something that they really do want to do. So, for instance, we use associate project manager quite a bit for that. So, there are multiple projects going on in NHS organisations all the time. So, we do use that one as almost like a leap forward for some people, and it's almost like testing the water. So, we absolutely don't have issues around, anybody, if they want to have an apprenticeship, they can. And, we have some, I guess a random one we had recently is one of the team want a sewing machinist. So, it's just, we just don't know sometimes when people come forward and ask me what I want to do, this and this, but it's very much about where they are now and where they see themselves going. But there's no, we don't say no to people, if that makes sense. It's only kind of around, are they able to achieve the knowledge, skills and behaviours within that apprenticeship, within the role that they're in. So thank you.
Thank you, Claire. James, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, so I do apologise. We don't at Corndel deliver sewing machine apprenticeships. So I put that one out there straight away. What we do at Corndel is we specialise in 2 real areas of apprenticeships. One is the management programme. So we do level 3 programmes and level 5, and we do more of those than anyone else in the country as an organisation. But we really specialise on coaching in those areas. The other area Corndel really majors on, and I guess we're the largest provider in this area, is data analytics. And the reason we specialise in those 2 areas as a provider is because we increasingly see that management skills and data skills, there's a real intersection in between there. and therefore we're able to tweak and modify programs to the needs of the employers we work with, to get those skill sets embedded. So we are a specialist provider in management and data, and I think there's just the general thing still, just the educational. There's a whole load of opportunities out there in different areas, and we see that there are some businesses that are exemplary in terms of really understanding the opportunity, and we still come across organisations that are just really still thinking of apprenticeships as just 18-year-olds. And don't get me wrong, we work with youngsters as well, but it's really worth doing the investigation to see how you can utilise funds that otherwise get lost, really, for an organisation.
Absolutely. I think there's a real misconception that apprenticeships are for entry level roles, not senior management development and so forth. I'd quite like to just we've talked about it a little bit, but just we've got another few minutes, but around the benefits for organisations as well. Obviously, it goes both ways. I'd be interested on any panelists' thoughts on some of those benefits.
Yeah, I'm happy to go, Annabelle. So I would say there are many benefits on different levels. So we've talked about the skill building and helping people to feel confident in job, but also confident to take their next promotion, confident in other areas of their life. The sort of self-belief I talked about earlier, we see that really playing through. But it can be coming from all sorts of angles. So we see imposter syndrome around numbers. People really struggle with the numbers, and people can get to very senior positions without raising their hand to say, this is difficult for me, because it's taboo. So you can really get to the heart of some issues with people, but it's actually, and again, I come back to the word empowering. It's what they make of it is up to them. So we'll create the environment, the resources, the support, but then they travel through this and pick up the skills that they need. And so the benefits for our business are plentiful, from projects being realised to better skilled, more confident managers and leaders. So really very varied.
Thanks, Becky. Does anyone else have anything to add on that question, benefits to employers?
Hi, Annabelle. I think it is a huge benefit across the organisation, and certainly from a retention perspective, and also sort of planning ahead, looking what our workforce will look like. And actually, through some of the apprenticeships, we recruiting into dedicated posts so that we can see people stepping into other shoes as they retire. So from a career progression perspective, it absolutely is a huge benefit to the organisation.
I think from us, Annabelle, there's kind of echoing what Becky said around confidence. People, we know from the surveys we do, people who go through a great management program become more confident. There's also another thing about, if you've got a great program, it's a wonderful way of investing in your people and actually supporting your people when things are challenging. And kind of also the most important thing, great managers make your organisation work better. And one of the lovely things we've seen is actually the coaching skills that you give to managers on programs. They start coaching the people who work for them, and that's real success where it starts having an impact. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you.
I think we have something else.
No, sorry. Please go.
And there's also something else around our workforce supply challenges, which colleagues have touched on. So we need to grow, particularly in clinical areas, across, not just in hospitals, but across community and other settings as well, which where we might not have, and some of those employers are small, so they might not have thought about doing some of this themselves. And almost, how do we use the opportunity with the development of integrated care systems becoming more and more established within localities, to actually think about how do we use those system partnerships to both maximise the use of the levy and the transfer rules that exist. So if you haven't spent the money as an organisation, you can transfer that to someone else within your patch to support recruitment and retention growth across the locality in both health and social care. So how do we use some of that to really hardwire our workforce supply strategy plans as a system? the ambulance sector are really good at some of this around spending the levy, and they're also really good at supporting delivery of programmes, because some of them are also education providers. So I think if we can collaborate in areas where we have other employers and other providers, we can really sort of maximise the learning that employers have had around how it's developed within, develop them as organisations to address workforce supply challenges.
Thank you. And just before we end, I just wanted to get in one last sorry, Claire, we're very nearly out of time, but I just wanted to get in one last super quick question. So someone is asking, can the panel suggest good resources to start to research into apprenticeships for senior management? So someone who obviously wants to get started and learn more about how to use the levy in their organisation. Some quick fire answers to this one, as we've probably got less than a minute left, sorry.
We've got quite a lot of sort of resources designed for managers and the employer organisation to be able to understand how the levy works, and then practical examples of who's done some of this well. We're happy to share that. So
unsurprisingly, Annabelle, from me, I'm going to say contact Corndel, and we can tell you everything about the management programs that exist. And that is a shameless plug, but as I said, we deliver more management training and data analytics training through the levy than anyone else in the country. So we'd love to be able to have a conversation about how we can help.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Any last comments from Becky or Claire? Claire?
I'm more than happy to, if anybody wants to contact me outside this, that's fine, to talk around actually our apprenticeships and how we run it here. Not a problem.
Brilliant.
Same offer. Same offer.
Fantastic. Well, I expect lots of emails from our audience members, but unfortunately, it is time to bring this webinar to a close. I think the discussions have kind of really emphasised the impact that utilising the levy can have on morale, how you can support senior managers. Lots of really interesting tips from Claire, obviously using it in your trust, and some really interesting kind of different perspectives from James and Becky, and obviously Caroline too. But I'd just like to thank all our panellists. I think it's been a really interesting session, and as well as Corndel for supporting today's event. And thanks too, of course, for everybody listening, viewing the webinar at home. I really hope you found an interesting and useful discussion. Goodbye for now.